Yeah, hello everybody. We are in the second hangout of COPE 14, and this time we want to reflect week 1 and look forward to week. We want to reflect week 2, of course, and look forward to week 3. I'm happy to have here Doris as facilitator of week 2. Hi, Doris.
Hi, Jutta. Hi, everybody.
And Thomas, who will speak about week 3 further on.
Hello.
So, hello Doris, welcome to the second hangout, and I want to ask you, how was week 2 for you?
It was really great. I absolutely enjoyed reading the posts of the learners who participated in the MOOC in the second week. I was quite amazed by the big variety of topics that learners have raised. When we asked them first to share experience on how they had been in contact with legal issues, amazing topics came up. Of course, some of the topics are very close to the lives of the learners, such as traveling, visa issues, but then also learners were sharing very interesting cases on bizarre criminal judgments or on online shopping, and also some learners shared like crazy laws, like animals who are not allowed to drink and other bizarre laws. So it was a big variety, and I learned a lot also. I was surprised. Some learners came up, for instance, with websites that I wasn't even aware of, such as a map of global legal cultures of the University of Ottawa. So that was just really great. Yeah. So I had a very good time during this week. I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay, and I saw online that you worked a lot because you were active in COPE 14 on holiday and on weekend. How did you manage to invest so much time?
Well, actually, it seems that when you have fun, you don't mind also working on a holiday. That's also sometimes a day where we have more time to really relax and sit down and then take your time to read the postings. And actually, as you know, Jutta, it was not only me working over the weekend and the holiday, it was you as well, and our learners. So many of the interesting postings arrived on the weekend, and that shows actually probably a modern way of learning. It's not restricted to the classroom physically. It's also not restricted to typical learning hours. And I think that's great. Yeah, I like that. It gives me freedom. Yeah, it makes me feel that I can enjoy my personal freedom also in learning.
And also in facilitating learning processes.
Right, exactly.
We collected some questions for this hangout from our learners, and I would like to start with the first question. And this was one around reparations, e.g. after a crime, and economic and immaterial consequences. Do you have some ideas to this question?
That question makes me think of situations such as, for instance, in South Africa, where after the change from apartheid to a different and new system, there was the need to provide justice for such people who have suffered over decades and who have really had an enormous also immaterial loss due to the fact that there was a need of a special tribunal. A special committee was put into place, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was chaired by Desmond Tutu, so a very charismatic and respected person. And that should also give authority to this committee. And when thinking about economic justice movement, on the other hand, reparations, it's very often about giving justice to persons who have for a long time been treated unfairly. And it's a very difficult issue because you can never fully make good the terrible crimes that have happened. But at least it's also sometimes a symbolic gesture that should lead to a reconciliation among the people involved, and that should, I think, and that's also something that law might serve as a basis for, namely to serve as and to lead to a solution that re-establishes a new system, which is a system that enables a common future. Yeah, so it's somehow a tool where a terrible past can come to an end and everybody feels at least partly relieved and feels that they have received a certain reparation, and that should then enable the country and the society to move on. Yeah? I'm not sure whether the person who has asked the question had that in mind, but this is actually what I'm thinking about. Yeah? About countries like South Africa, yeah? Who have been going through such enormous changes. And the legal system is part of it. It's not the only system that heavily influences the future of a country like South Africa, but it has a certain impact. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, I think that was an interesting question and answer. Did you see that there were also a lot of discussion about corruption? And
right.
From one of the learners was the question, where does exchanging favors end and corruption start?
Yeah. That would be a question that we could discuss for a long time. I think it's a very interesting and good question, as all the other questions as well. On the one hand, there is certainly no very clear dividing line. When visiting a partner university, for instance, and our institute has more than 60 partner universities worldwide, and when traveling to a partner university, for instance, in Eastern Europe or in Asia, I would certainly bring some gifts. It would be expected, yeah? But they have to be in a proportionate and adequate relationship. Yeah? So I would not usually bring a gift with an enormous amount of money, but a reasonable gift that would be suitable for the occasion. And so this would be just exchanging favors. Huh? It would not be meant to bribe somebody. And for me, actually, the difference between exchanging favors and corruption is also the intention behind it. Yeah? If I'm visiting a friend or a partner university or a business partner, and I show my respect by bringing a small gift, that means exchanging favors. If I'm carrying a suitcase full of money for the purpose, for instance, if I'm a company and I want to get a contract from government and I hand over the suitcase full of money to the government civil servant, that's corruption. It's bribery. Yeah? So I think the dividing line is mostly the purpose, why you give the gift. Yeah? If you give the presents because you want to have some economic gains, some immediate ones, then it goes into bribery and it goes into corruption. Yeah? However, as we know, in some countries, it's extremely common. It's part of the culture of the country. It's part of the system. Yeah? However, as we know also from companies like Siemens and some others, they have managed to give up, to a large degree at least, on such corrupt activities, yeah? And they are still in business. Yeah? So maybe this can also be a topic for the next week, for the Emerging Markets Week, yeah? To discuss issues of corruption in specific markets.
Okay, thanks. And then this was not a question, but in our discussion before this hangout, we spoke about burnout in different countries because some of the learners posted their a link and their thoughts about it. So maybe could you add how it looks like from a legal perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, the phenomenon of burnout is getting more and more common in so many countries. Also, not only, but also because the expectations on workers are so extremely high. And also, not only the external expectations, but also the self-expectations of the workers, that they feel they have to fulfill a very high goal. So it's a phenomenon happening in Europe, but also in many other countries and in many other continents. And from the legal point of view, the following considerations have to be taken into account. Burnout can and will eventually lead to severe health problems. So it will lead to sickness of people. And then the question is, how is the worker protected in case of sickness? In Austria, for instance, we have a rather general and rather generous system. Everybody who is employed as a worker in Austria has health insurance by the law. So it's not because the employer is giving a bonus. It's a legal requirement. It's a mandatory legal requirement. So everybody has health insurance. And we know that there are so many countries worldwide where health insurance is actually a luxury, yeah, provided by the employer. In Austria, we are fortunate in that sense. It costs us a fortune also, yeah. So we pay a lot for our health insurance, but on the other hand, it's a legal benefit that we have. And that means if I'm having burnout, for a certain period of time, I will still receive the salary from my employer. And then after a specific point in time, the employer does not have to continue paying my salary if I'm not working. Then the public health insurance is taking over. Yeah? So that means at least that people have a certain amount of months where they can recover, hopefully from burnout, and then get back to work if they try to heal and overcome their health problems. It's not only for burnout, but for all kinds of health problems. We know, however, that burnout has also become a really big problem in many Asian countries. And it may also be linked to the number of hours that you work per year. I found out, and it was also, I think, in one of the postings in the MOOC, that in Korea, people work like 2,400 hours a year, or days, sorry, not hours. No, hours it must be, yeah. Sorry, I'm confused, yeah. So they work 2,400 hours a year, while somebody in Austria would work maybe 1,700 hours a year. And so that's a big difference. And we know also from Asian societies, and we've had lots of discussions on the Chinese legal system in week 2 in the MOOC, that China is also now gradually building up even some aspects of labor law. Yeah? But in some other Asian countries, the standard of labor law is still really low. Think of the terrible cases in Bangladesh where textile workers were dying because the factories were collapsing because the safety of the building wasn't given. Yeah? So that's a very low standard of labor protection, if not even the buildings that workers work in is safe enough. And then countries would, however, gradually build up also a system of health insurance. Yeah? But it's a long way to go. And that means that also the protection, the legal protection that workers have in case of burnout is very different from one country to the other. Yeah? So there is a very big diversity. In Western Europe, in most countries or in some countries, the legal protection is rather high, while in many other countries, victims of burnout are facing not only their personal problems and their health problems, but they have little legal protection. So there is a lot to be done, actually, also by the international community, such as, for instance, the International Labour Organization, that could create conventions that protect the interests of workers.
Okay, thank you. And maybe, yeah, the learners who participate now looking at this Hangout see that Thomas is checking all the possibilities of Google plus Hangout. I'm not sure that you know that everybody can see what you are testing, Thomas. So maybe you can, yeah, try this out when it's your turn. And now we return to Doris with 2 more philosophical questions. And there was one from Andrea who asked, in a world that is growing closer and closer every day, will it be possible to have one law valid for everybody?
The answer clearly is no. It will not be possible to have a law valid for everybody, and in my opinion, it will actually also not be desirable to have a law valid for everybody because the needs of people are diverse. Yeah? So it's probably good and legitimate to have a law that is different according to the situation of people. However, certainly in the globalized world of today, there are many factors that lead to a certain harmonization of the laws. First of all, actually I would like to name 3 phenomena that have been leading to a harmonization of laws worldwide. One of them are multinational organizations and multinational companies. Yeah? Multinational companies, they use contracts worldwide, and they also use the freedom of law in contract law. Yeah? So the principle of freedom of contract is a concept, a principle that's acknowledged worldwide, and multinational companies have been using it. So the contract forms that are used worldwide have become very, very similar. So due to the global trade of globally acting companies, there is a certain harmonization of laws taking place. The second one is that actually international organizations, such as the United Nations or the World Trade Organization, World Bank, IMF, or the International Labour Organization, they have been creating conventions, model laws, that the member states have implemented into their national legal orders. And for instance, I'll give you one example. The patent law of India has lately been changed a lot in order to meet the standards of the WTO, of the World Trade Organization. Therefore, it's not only the laws of Western countries, but also the law of emerging economies that are gradually getting up to the international standards provided by the big organizations. And the third impact, and that's also kind of interesting, I think, is that when the national parliaments are drafting new laws, are creating new legislation, they very often look into models of other countries. And so, for instance, the German Code of Private Law has served as a model in many countries, such as in Greece, in Thailand, in Japan, in China. Yeah? So therefore, it's also like a globally acting vision of the legislator, looking for the best model. Yeah? There is, of course, not the best model, because each country has its unique characteristics, but the world is also growing closer when it comes to the law. Yeah? There will, however, never be a law valid for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Doris. And now let's have a look at new questions from learners who are watching the live stream. And I have one question of John, and he asks about global collaboration or collaboration across borders. He writes that he can see how norms, values, and attitudes affect collaboration. Mm-hmm. And now he's asking you, are you saying that the legal culture is a driver of norms, values, and attitudes?
I think it's going actually both ways. On the one hand, legal norms are a driver of attitudes. For instance, I give you a very simple example. In Austria, if you drive within the limits of a community, of a city, usually the speed limit is 50 kilometers per hour, so you should not exceed it. Yeah? And also, the law enforcement by the police is rather strict. And if you are caught speeding, the ticket that you get is rather expensive. Yeah? And so, the existence of the legal norms and the strict law enforcement by the police may, but I would like to emphasize the term may also influence the attitude of people that it's right to drive not too fast in the cities in order not to become too dangerous for the people living within the boundaries of the cities. Yeah. So on the one hand, the legal norms, they may influence the values and the attitudes, but even more so, primarily the values and the attitudes, they influence the legal norms. Yeah? For instance, and I think that was also a discussion that came up in the MOOC in week 2 with respect to visa and entry requirements if you travel to a country. And many countries, especially the US, but also some other countries, make it so difficult now to enter the country because they are always checking who you are, and they take your fingerprints and so on and so forth, and they delay the immigration, the entry into the country enormously for the purpose of providing for the safety of the inhabitants of the country. And so actually also a society that would be very conscious and very concerned with safety might be in favor of laws that make it more difficult to enter the country. Yeah? So it's very often the values in the society that influence the legal norms, but vice versa as well. Yeah? I would see primarily an influence, a strong influence of the values on the law, but vice versa also gradually and maybe over generations. The law will very often also have an impact on the values in the society.
Okay, and John is asking you whether you feel that an understanding of legal cultures is essential competence for collaboration across borders.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think it's essential because if you do not have this awareness and this sensitivity, or this sensitivity and awareness and this knowledge, and the skills also to manage the different legal cultures, you might fall into traps. Yeah? You might encounter difficulties, and you might not be aware of the fact that a very detailed communication is needed to address those issues. Yeah? So I think it is vital. Yeah? I think such awareness and knowledge on the existence of legal cultures, and especially on how to apply the law, how strictly it will be enforced. I remember I once had a very dear colleague in my working environment, a lady from Brazil. And I always remember that she told us a story. She said, in Brazil, we always say, for good friends, everything is possible. For enemies, we use the law. And that really stuck in my head, in my brain, because I thought this is kind of an interesting statement. As somebody who has a degree in law and who teaches law, I'm not particularly fond of it. However, I think it illustrates quite well the perception on the application of the law. Yeah? And it may not be entirely true nowadays, what she has told me, because she has left Brazil a couple of decades ago. However, I thought this is just an interesting statement, also reflecting the variety of legal cultures worldwide. Okay,
I hope that this will answer John's questions. And there's another question of Gerald, who writes about, he writes a lot actually. He writes there are some countries who are not interested into international agreements and international laws, and that there are people in the MOOC who discuss about global fairness. And now he asks how we could get to somewhat an international shared understanding of fairness and put it to laws. Would this be possible? How could it be done, Doris?
Actually, in some international agreements, the term fairness is actually coming up. I give you an example. There is an international agreement, it's called the Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods. This convention has about 80 member states, so it's worldwide receptive. And it includes also some principles on how fairness should be applied in international sales contracts. And for instance, this convention, where actually all big trading nations are members, such as the United States, but also China, Japan, India, many Latin American countries, most EU member states, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, some African states, and so on. And there is a statement in the convention that says, actually, both the seller and the buyer should act in good faith. And in good faith, that means they should be honest with each other. However, of course, the interpretation, what does it mean to be honest, that's very often done in the sense of the underlying culture of the specific country. Yeah? So fairness is actually an acknowledged principle of law worldwide, but the specific interpretation is very often done in the context of the values of the society. What does it mean to be fair? Yeah? And I think one of the learners in the MOOC also referred to this case of the lady who was raped in a country in the Arab world, and then she informed the authorities, and then she was actually herself prosecuted. And that also shows that there is a very big diversity in how fairness is actually seen. Yeah? What is fair? What is fair is very often interpreted differently. But there are standards, international standards. They will, however, only gradually be implemented. And as Gerald also stated, there are some countries that do not conclude so many international agreements, that are hesitant to enter into such international agreements, but these are actually only few. However, what you should consider is sometimes a country would sign an international agreement. However, then they would not implement it into their national laws. So it would not really be effective. It's only signed on a superficial level, but it does not really create any rights for citizens. Huh? And then it's actually worthless. And then also the international community has very little impact on that. Huh? That's very often a political game, and it's not a legal issue. So what we have to accept when it comes to laws is that laws serve as a tool. However, if a government isn't willing to put it into place due to political reasons, the law remains dead in that sense. Yeah? The law cannot be having any impact. That's sad, but it's reality.
Okay. There's another question of Natasha. She's asking about the consequences of differences of legal cultures in countries with case law tradition and civil law tradition. Mm-hmm. And she writes, I understood that countries with a case law tradition deal with specific legal issues in a more flexible and individual way than countries with civil law traditions. And she asks if this is right or wrong or irrelevant.
I would not fully agree. It's the common perception, yeah, that in a case law system you are more flexible. But then you should consider that in a case law system, the judge who decides on a case is bound by existing precedent decisions. Yeah? It's simply a different way on how to solve a legal problem. If you operate in a system of case law, the first source of law that you would always look up would be existing case law. That means earlier cases that have been decided. Yeah? And then if the facts of the present situation are similar to the ones of the decided case, the judge will have to decide consistently with the earlier case law, yeah? Unless it's overruled. In exceptional circumstances, precedent cases can be overruled. If, for example, the needs in society have dramatically changed, or if the judges in the Supreme Court panel find out that the earlier decision is not considered valid any longer for whatever reason. Yeah. So, of course, a case law system may be more flexible. However, also the civil law tradition gives some flexibility, because in the civil law tradition, your primary source is the legislation by parliament, so the codes, the statutes, the acts of parliament. And if you look into these acts of parliament, you find a certain general rule. And the flexibility in the civil law system comes from the interpretation of the rule in the statutory law. And then you can interpret it. And a very good lawyer would always be an expert on how to interpret the law. It can be either how to interpret the provision in the statutory law or how to interpret the existing case law. Yeah? I remember when I worked in a law firm, and I've been working in a law firm for a couple of years, I was really amazed by some of my bosses who were excellent lawyers, because they could always find a specific little point in the facts that they highlighted, and that served as a good basis for our client to not really twist the law, but to interpret the law in a new light. Yeah? And you can do that both in the civil law and in the common law tradition. I hope that this answer was not too confusing now.
For me, it was not confusing.
Okay.
And there's a last more philosophical question as well. If power shifts away from Western world to maybe China or else, how will that be reflected in international legal culture? Asks Andrea.
I think that's also a very nice question. In my opinion, what countries like China or Far East Asia in general can offer us is really a different approach to conflict resolution, such as it was also highlighted in the video, in the interview that I could do with Veit Oelberger. It's much more common in Far East Asia to use mediation or arbitration as a method of dispute resolution, because it's a way to resolve a conflict without a party having to lose face. Yeah? So that means that both parties that are involved in a conflict may invest a lot of time and effort to find a solution that suits them both, that also maintains a certain relationship between the parties. And that's an approach that I think will gradually become, might gradually become more visible also in Western legal cultures. Yeah? So when it comes to methods of dispute resolution, emerging economies like China, where a different approach to conflict resolution is applied, that may have an impact also on legal cultures in the West. And in my view, it might provide very attractive opportunities for businesses and for individuals also in the West.
Okay, Doris, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
These were the questions. And I think with this interview and your answers, week 2 more or less is finished. So Doris, you have the opportunity to say bye-bye to the learners.
I would love to say bye-bye and to thank you all warmly. Actually, when reading your posts, when browsing through the different comments in week 2, I also personally learned a lot, and it reminded me of one of the fundamental principles of a MOOC in general, namely of connectivism. Yeah, I think we were well connected, and I thank you all, dear learners. I also wish to thank you a lot, Jutta, and all your team members, Erika and so on, for supporting us so much during the second week. I enjoyed it a lot, and I wish everybody a fantastic week 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 in the MOOC. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So now I'm happy to announce the facilitator of week 3, Thomas. Hi, Thomas. Would you please present yourself and present the week?
Yes, well, first of all, congratulations to Doris for a successful week 2, and we hope to pick up straight from there and continue with a thrilling and exciting week 3, which is going to be on the topic of doing business in emerging markets. In order to present the week to you, I was thinking first I would tell you a little bit about who am I, I will also introduce our visiting speaker of the week, Professor Jutta Pauschenwein. I will talk a little bit about the contents, and some of the contents are actually being taken up from previous weeks already and are being continued from a business perspective. And then I will also talk a little bit about the structure of week 3, how does it work, and how can you find your way through week 3. So a little bit about myself. My name is Thomas, and I teach international economics. I also teach project management and process management at FH JOANNEUM. In the master's program in business in emerging markets, I focus on international political economy. So this is my, so to speak, my background. I have some international experience. I studied for 2 years in the Netherlands. I worked on international projects in the past 10 years or something like that, in the United States, in Latin America, in countries such as Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, etc. And I was also giving speeches and trainings in numerous other emerging markets such as India, Singapore, and so on and so forth. I currently live in Slovenia, so that rounds up my international experience a little. Professionally, I'm also in charge of the research team that we have, where we work together with a lot of partners from emerging markets. So I'm very much looking forward to collaborating with you and to facilitate your learning process in the upcoming week. We are also going to have a visiting speaker, and our visiting speaker, Jutta Pauschenwein, is Professor for International Business at the Master Degree Program in Doing Business in Emerging Markets at FH JOANNEUM. He's originally from Slovenia and works also as an independent consultant in mostly Central and Southeastern European countries, which is a region that has a large number of so-called European emerging markets. And he consults municipalities or other public authorities also on attracting foreign direct investment, so on how to bring businesses to these countries. So this is a little bit about the team that is going to help you, and of course we're very grateful also this week to have Jutta and her team supporting us as moderators. In terms of contents, Doris has mentioned already, for instance, that corruption is one of the themes that came up already, and it's also actually going to be one of the topics that we're going to have in the advanced assignment in week 3. So stick with us until the very end of week 3 to go and continue discussing the topic of corruption. I also think that we will be able to present a generally rather dry topic, namely business, in a very thrilling and interesting way. We will be talking about business models and strategies, especially geared towards emerging markets. So think about, for instance, a typical street vendor which owns a little shop or a little stand in India selling chewing gum, tobacco, and all sorts of little items. So what would his or her business model look like? It would most probably also involve selling cigarettes not by the pack, but by individual pieces. It would also mean that he has to address customers from a lower segment of or from a lower purchasing power segment, so from the lower end of the market, which in general is a bigger share of the population in emerging markets than it is in traditional Western industrialized countries. Also imagine a large multinational company such as Procter & Gamble or Unilever selling soap. If you sell soap in emerging markets, you do that differently than you sell soap in or shower gel in Europe, for instance. You focus on smaller sizes, you try to bring the price down to address this so-called bottom of the pyramid, so the lower segment of the market. So these are just some of the themes that we're gonna discuss this week. In the next couple of minutes also there will be a welcoming posting available on the COP14 website, which already gives you a nice introduction into the topics that we're talking about, and then also leads you from there to the overview website of week 3. It also introduces the assignments, etc. And this is actually where we are already in the middle of the topic on how does week 3 really work? How can I, as a learner, find my way through week 3? First of all, you will have a video to be watched on the COPE14 website directly for each of the topics that we're dealing with. First video is going to be on an introduction into week 3, and then we have 3 more videos, each connected to one of our assignments. So in total we have 3 assignments. The first one is an introductory assignment, so very basic. We're going to try to develop what makes up for an emerging market. So answering the question, what is an emerging market? How can we define it? How can we analyze an emerging market? And we're going to look at existing rankings, at existing country lists that are out there that you can find on the web, etc. This is a very introductory assignment that we're going to give you, and you will be able to follow our content and our materials that we have provided for you in the assignment. So there will be links that you can surf to, etc. Second assignment will be on the topic of multinational enterprises, but not multinational enterprises that originate in the traditional industrial countries, but multinational enterprises that originate from emerging markets. So in the past couple of years, you have probably followed in the news that multinational companies from emerging markets have started to acquire companies in Europe and in the United States. We're talking about Indian companies that purchased large steel manufacturers or automotive companies in Europe, etc. You will have the opportunity to select one company and to analyze that particular company from an emerging market perspective in detail. So this is assignment number 2. And for those of you who can't get enough of us, we also have an advanced assignment for you, which is not a mandatory assignment, but it is a freebie, so to speak, a goodie for you. And it deals with the question on how to operate a business in emerging markets. And there we're going to hint also on, or we're going to address also the question on about corruption and other factors that you need to take into account when you do business in emerging markets. So this is the structure of week 3, and since this is a MOOC which has a very open approach to learning, we did not want to prescribe or predefine how you're going to solve the assignments that we have given you. So we give you the assignment, but it's up to you how you're going about this assignment, how you find a solution, and also how you present your solution. Many of you are aiming for a badge as well to get recognized, so to speak, your efforts in learning here. For us, it is completely open how and in which format you're submitting the solution to your assignment. If you're going to choose to do a little video and submit it on YouTube, that's fine for us. If you're going to have a PowerPoint presentation, fine for us. If you want to use Prezi, fine for us. If you want to do your blog post, it's fine for us. Whatever you can think about, it's okay, as long as you let us know about it. And this you can do through the Facebook group, through the Google Plus group, or also directly on the COPE14 website. So this will be somehow, in a nutshell, what awaits you in week 3 of COPE14.
Okay. Thanks, Tom, for your explanations, and I hope that everything is clear. And your post will be published soon. And we will meet again in 1 week, reflecting week 3.
Exactly. And in week 3, and the final hangout of week 3, we will also have the opportunity to ask questions and discuss with Professor Bobek, who is going to join us then as well on a live session.
Okay, perfect. Then good evening, everybody. Bye, Thomas. And we will
enjoy your learning.
Bye.
Bye.